Right now, the day's biggest news stories from a Vegas perspective. This is the Vegas Take with Sharp and Shapiro.
All right, welcome back. Hour number 2. It is the Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. So glad you could join us on a Tuesday. What will happen in the next press conference, coronavirus press conference with Donald Trump, the theatrics about it's just we'll find out. But the guy joining us on the line right now, love having him on. Of course, he's a former GOP congressman and a former presidential candidate, Joe Walsh, joining us on the line. Joe, thanks so much for joining us. How are you?
Hey, guys, I appreciate the invite. It's always good to be with you.
Appreciate that, Joe. So I want to start by saying this. You had a very funny tweet yesterday. Well, you had a lot of funny tweets, but, I watched the press conference yesterday with the president, and you tweeted out something along the lines of, I missed the press conference, but I learned it was just a MyPillow infomercial. Can you tackle? Because we've been debating that. I thought it was inappropriate, Joe, that the president gave these CEOs that platform to talk about religion, to praise the president, and even in the MyPillow Mike Lindell situation, praise, him winning in 2016. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, and look, when I was on the radio, I've got a MyPillow, doggone it. When I was on the radio for 6 years, I advertised for MyPillow. It's a good pillow. But no, it was absolute BS. Look, these daily briefings are, here's the problem, and this is at the crux of everything. Donald Trump is incapable, I mean humanly incapable, of putting anyone before himself. He can't put the interest of the country before himself. By the way, that's why we are where we are with this virus right now. So these daily briefings, all they are is a promotion for Donald Trump. So he brings a guy like Mike Lindell out there just to stroke Trump, and that's what it is. He's a $300,000 donor to Donald Trump. He put one of his donors out there to say that God brought us Donald Trump. That was the whole purpose.
You don't think that misinformation from China and the World Health Organization is partially why we're in the position that we're in right now? And really, the United States, as a whole, isn't in that bad of a position. For example, your state of Illinois has 5,700 cases, and you have a city like Chicago that has a large population density and has a decent-sized public transit system. But then you've got a state like New York with 76,000 cases and 1,500 deaths. You don't think that there should be some blame on China and WHO for putting us in this situation?
You make a great point. We did not, Donald Trump did not create this virus. China did. And yeah, we don't and shouldn't believe a word that comes out of China. But our awful response, the fact that we weren't ready for it, that's all on Trump. Look, we know that he ignored all the warnings. He was told in late December and early January by our intelligence people and our scientists and our doctors, this thing's coming. It's a big deal. We got to do something about it now. Donald Trump refused to do anything about it. And then we because Trump lies all the time about everything, we really overlook this. Who the hell lies to the American people about a virus that's killing the American people? And for 8 to 10 weeks, Donald Trump lied to us about this virus. That's not him, guys. He didn't prepare the country for this.
I wanted to do 15 minutes and talk more about MyPillow, but I think we need to move on, Joe. I believe you. I believe you completely. So, Joe, I kind of agree with you. I think that the right, they're using the excuse of the impeachment, the reason why Trump, didn't do as much as he could have done to prevent this virus from entering this country. You put out a tweet that said impeachment didn't keep Trump from caring about the virus. Trump kept Trump from caring about the virus. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I wrote a book that came out a month ago. It's called F Silence. And it basically makes the case that Donald Trump is unfit to be president. When I was campaigning against him last 6 months, I said that a lot. And that's a serious charge. Why do I think Trump's unfit? Mainly because he's incapable of telling the truth, and he's incapable of putting the country's interest before his own. Donald Trump doesn't care and didn't care about this virus. When he was first told about it, right away he thought, All I care about is my reelection, so I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to diminish it. I'm going to downplay it, and I'm going to lie about it. And that's what he did for 8 or 9 weeks, and that's why the country was not prepared for this.
Sure. I want to go back to these press conferences. You're no stranger to press conferences. You've held plenty of your own, right? As a congressman, as a presidential candidate, a former presidential candidate. So I want to go to two different aspects of, what took place yesterday. We talked about Mike Lindell. We all, at least you and I, agree that it was inappropriate. You have a reporter from OAN, who really is a Trump network, not even a reporter, who compares the coronavirus to abortion. Republicans are not speaking out on that. Yet you have a PBS reporter. She does a fantastic job asking him a very logical and fair question about ventilators and why in South Korea, per capita, they have more than us. And then Jim Acosta uses his own remarks to ask him a question. What does Trump do? Yeah. He attacks both of those reporters for asking what I consider very logical and fair questions. Doesn't say anything about a reporter who compares abortion to the coronavirus.
See, 2 points to make. Donald Trump's never been a tough guy. He's an absolute wussy. I don't know if I can say pussy. He's a pussy. He's the biggest crybaby. We've never had a crybaby like this in the White House. He can't handle simple, straight questions from CNN. Here's the other thing, though, that's really disappointing. I come from the conservative media world. OAN, that's a joke. But more importantly, Fox News, people like Sean Hannity, they've been parroting Trump's lies about this virus for the last 8 to 9 weeks. Somebody, guys, when this is all done, and in 4 or 5 years, when we find out exactly who died from this virus, we're going to find out that, unfortunately, sadly, a bunch of Fox News listeners were disproportionately affected by this virus because they bought what Sean Hannity and Trump told them.
So, Joe, I wanted to talk back about the difference between the two states. New York State, obviously, they've got 76,000 cases. Illinois has 5,000. Why do you think there is such a giant discrepancy? Is it social distancing? Why is New York being ravaged by this virus and Illinois and a city like Chicago is not?
Well, that's a really great point. So I think part of it is governance. And if I jump on Trump's ass for diminishing the virus, Bill de Blasio did too. About 3 weeks ago, de Blasio was still telling people in New York to go about your daily lives.
Yes,
but
yes,
look,
he was.
I come from Chicago. Chicago ain't New York. New York is a humongous city. It's an international city. I think New York City was also victimized by the inordinate amount of international travel that goes in and out of that city. But I'm telling you right now, as I speak to you right now, they're predicting that Chicago is one of the next hot spots. So watch Chicago's numbers continue to peak.
What do you think it says about our society that Kim Kardashian is on The View talking about how she's managing during this coronavirus? I know you put out a tweet that says you don't care how Kim Kardashian is managing. Quite frankly, Joe, neither do I. What does that say about our society when you have The View? And I'm not a big fan of The View, but what does that say just in general, when you hear about these celebrities like Kim Kardashian, instead of talking more about the heroes, the doctors, the nurses, the people, the cops, some of whom have died?
It's such BS, and shame on The View, and shame on our media elites for being so damn tone deaf. Who gives a flying you-know-what how Kim Kardashian is managing social distancing? You nailed it, my friend. I read a story 2 nights ago about a nurse, a young mom who just went through a 24-hour shift. She came home to her 3 little kids. She's scared to death that she's going to expose her kids to the virus. She's exhausted. She's worried about paying her bills, and then she's got to go back on the front lines. I am much more interested in how a woman like that is managing this than a Kim Kardashian.
If you're just joining us, we are speaking to Joe Walsh, a former GOP congressman and presidential candidate. Go ahead, JD.
So, Joe, I've been noticing that Joe Biden is getting very little screen time, and when he does, he just really isn't handling himself well. I'm not sure he has the mental acuity to be the president of the United States. We've had this conversation before. But Andrew Cuomo, governor of New York, is getting a lot of screen time every single day, for obvious reasons. He is being talked about as potentially presidential up there. Do you think that it's possible that the Democratic Party will ditch Joe Biden as a presidential candidate and pick up Andrew Cuomo after this?
Look, if this had hit last year and Cuomo was doing last year what he's doing this year, I think he would be drafted. I think it's too late for the Democrat Party to push Biden aside. If Biden doesn't make it, it will be on Biden. And I'm out there publicly. I'm a Tea Party conservative, but I'll support whoever the Democrats nominate. I wish that Joe Biden could exhibit more strength throughout this and be a real counter to the egomaniac that Trump is. Because right now, I agree with you. Right now, Biden doesn't look real sure of himself.
Joe, I know you've been asked this question a million times over the last few years. I know Bill Maher asked you this question. You've made great appearances on his show. You've done national. But again, I have to ask you this again. You're a smart guy. What is it about Donald Trump? How did he con you into you praising him and supporting him several years ago? Because I don't think you've said one good thing about him the last couple of years. So when someone goes up to you and asks you that question, I mean, how do you respond to that? Because, again, this was a man several years ago that you were actually supporting. How do you do a flip-flop, a 180? Now, listen, I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm in the middle. I never liked Donald Trump. I always considered him to be a con man. I didn't think he was as bad as he is now. I'll be the first one to admit. I thought when he won the presidency, the rhetoric would stop. Boy, was I wrong. But I never really looked at this guy as a good man. So what was the difference for you, and when did you decide to change your mind?
Well, I never felt like I was conned. I always figured Trump was kind of a bad guy. He wasn't Hillary. I didn't want to vote for Hillary. I figured Trump's a goof, and maybe he'll just appoint a few good people, and maybe a few good things might happen. I'm not guilty of being conned by Trump, but I am guilty, very guilty, of not paying enough attention to Trump. If I had paid more attention to him, and I'm probably older than you guys, I never paid attention to Trump back in the 80s and 90s. I didn't even know, I never watched The Apprentice. But even during that campaign in 2016, and I was on the radio around the country, I didn't pay enough attention to how much of a horrible human being he was. That's on me. I didn't do my job. And look, guys, I when I was running for president, I apologized every day for helping to lead to Trump and not paying attention to him. Sure. I should have.
Understood, and I appreciate your honesty on that. I have to ask you another thing that Trump is making accusations that people are, quote, going through the back door in these hospitals, stealing masks and other items, when I haven't seen any actual evidence to back that up. What do you make of that? I know Cuomo, and I respect him for not making it political. When he was asked that question last night on CNN, he really didn't want to get into the political aspects of it. He said, well, you better ask the president. And I get why he's doing that, because he wants cooperation from the administration, and I commend him for it. But what do you make of the president of the United States? In a way, that's what he was doing, right, Joe? He's accusing the good nurses and doctors and people that are working in the hospitals of stealing. I mean, what do you make of that?
There is no low. Again, I know I sound like a broken record, and I apologize, you guys. But he's a horrible human being. The fascinating thing about Trump and what the country's going through right now is I think a lot of people who don't pay attention to politics didn't pay attention to politics before this virus. Now they're seeing almost on a daily basis what a horrible human being he is. I mean, Donald Trump has never, ever, ever taken responsibility for anything he's done. This is a bad thing. This is a horrible thing that's happened to the country. Our economy has been shut down. We could have 100 to 200,000 people die when this is all over. That's if we do everything right. Donald Trump is going to have to put this on somebody. He's going to have to blame somebody. So hell, he'll blame China. He'll blame Obama. He'll blame our doctors and nurses.
Yeah. You're right. Sadly, I think you're right, Joe. Okay, last question for you. If you're Joe Walsh right now, the president of the United States, we know that the mistakes that Donald, at least most of us do, I think, know the mistakes that Trump and his administration have made in the past year. If you're the president right now, what would you do? What would you do differently, and what would you tell the president?
Well, I'd have a daily briefing today, and I'd tell the American people, this is my last daily briefing. you are going to hear from Fauci and the experts. You're not going to hear from me maybe once every 2 weeks. And in the daily briefing that I'd have today, I do what Trump should have done a month and a half ago. I'd look the American people in the face and I'd give them the truth. This is the deal. This is a bad thing. We are all going to be hurt. We're all going to have to sacrifice. We're all going to know somebody who's going to die. This is a bad, horrible thing. We should have prepared better. Now we're all in this together. I apologize for what I've done. Now let's work on this together and listen to our experts. And then I go away and let our experts dictate what we do.
Well said, Joe. Really well said. Listen, we always appreciate it when you come on. You're always outspoken and opinionated and honest, and I think that's very rare in not just politicians, but people in general. So we always appreciate it when you come on.
Can I give you two a compliment?
Sure.
You guys are great, and you have a great show, and you've got both viewpoints, and you express and you're open to all viewpoints. I find that so unique about your show. I find it so refreshing. And, man, we need shows like this right now in these very tribal times in which we live. So great job, you guys.
Thank you very much. And, Joe, that means a lot. Actually, we are in the process of being heard in many more markets across the United States.
Awesome.
And we'll keep you updated on that.
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. And I look forward to we look forward to meeting you down the road. We know you're a busy guy. But, Joe Walsh, thank you so much for joining us.
Guys.
Stay safe, my
lot,
friend. My pillow will be in the mail. I'll send you one. Thanks, Joe. We appreciate your time. There you go. He is Joe Walsh, former GOP congressman, presidential candidate, and a MyPillow supporter. He likes the pillows. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll take some of your phone calls. A lot of things that we need to get to. By the way, Diamond and Silk. That's right. Diamond and Silk back in the news. We have the audio to prove that, so we'll play that for you. And a little bit of what Joe Walsh just talked about, misinformation by certain members of the media, by certain networks. We're going to get to that coming back. And again, take your calls at 702-257-5396. Also, your reaction to our interview with former presidential candidate Joe Walsh. Take a quick break. Be back right after this. You're listening to The Vegas Take right here on the all-new 101.5 FM, 720 AM, KDOM.